Well, it's Wednesday, a beautiful one at that, and we're grateful for weather. It's great to be back, by the way. Good morning. Welcome to your Perfect Morning Starter right here on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka. Hi, guys.
Good morning, Bukola. Welcome. And I'm Jeffrey Uzama.
I'm Kyle Kikulu. When you start with well, you know that it's going to be a show. But welcome to the show. It's the day after the big day on the floor of the Senate. Well, let's just say the National Assembly, because there was lots of activities on the outside and on the inside. So Nigeria's Senate has found a way to sort of balance their own approach to the electronic transmission bit in the Electoral Act, saying, oh yes, there will be electoral transmission of results, but if it doesn't work out, then we switch to manual. So sort of a balancing act for them. But today on the show, we're going to test that provision, Clause 60 sub 3 of the Electoral Act repeal and reenactment, which is now meant to be the Electoral Act 2026. What we hear is President Bola Tinubu is going to sign that bill into law this month. But guys, is the coast clear just yet?
No, it's not clear. I do not agree with the Senate explicitly, with the greatest respect to them. So how does the BVAS work? Let's start with that. How does it work? The BVAS is a machine that does accreditation and result uploads. And for all of this, the only time you need technology is the upload. I'll say it again. The BVAS was designed for offline capabilities. So if you go to your polling unit, it's already uploaded inside. So when you're doing your biometrics, it doesn't need all that internet and all of that. According to what I know, it's had to be corrected. So it's designed for that. Now, it queries to be sure that that's your polling unit and all of that is done. The issue of results is simple. After elections have been done, sorted, counted, results announced, everybody signs that result. At the end of that exercise, the law says, snap it. Snapping it doesn't need technology. Let me repeat myself. Snapping doesn't require technology. For it to upload and being transmitted is what requires technology. So if you snap
internet, you mean?
Yes, that internet technology, yes, for it to be transmitted or uploaded to IREV. Yeah. So that proviso that the Senate has done, at face value, looks like it's caring for the people that don't have internet capability. But it's all politics to me. It's like going back to the days of incident form masters from EC8A. The BVAS doesn't require internet for you to accredit. It doesn't require internet for you to snap. It only requires internet for that, whatever you captured as picture, to go to the IRF. So that's why INEC will say, when the BVAS finds internet, it can upload. So what is the argument that will make this election different from the other election? Everything that I want to do in 2027 has already been done in 2023. The only difference in this election is to say you do not have the discretion anymore, INEC, for whatever reason, not to snap. I repeat, not to snap, capture, and upload. So when you capture, whatever the internet comes, it goes. So this proviso will give room for all kinds of shenanigans that can happen. So I stand as a person with a House of Representatives. We can quarrel over the issue of real time as a word. But nothing should happen in the next election where that picture should not be snapped at the polling unit. Anything less than that. So the proviso that, because I was watching the old proceedings, and I saw the submissions of the senators and all of that. So for me, it doesn't hold water, because nothing from accreditation to snapping with BVAS requires any form of internet. You only require internet when you want to upload. So just snap it first. Internet will do the rest.
Jeffrey, I couldn't agree with you more on this one. Let's first of all look at what got us here. And we could recall the number of deferments of the passing of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2026 by the Senate. The many committees set up until the initial passing of, you know, what was passed before the Senate now rescinded its decision and made a provision for electronic transmission of results, but with a manual backup. That, in the first place, gave an indication of where the heart of the Senate truly laid in terms of our electoral process. Was pressure that made the Senate rescind its decision to reconsider and, you know, provide for an amendment yet again. But if we looked at it critically, if the elections are truly transparent and what we have is electronic transmission of results, INEC shall transmit results electronically without manual backup, without any anticipation of anything going wrong with the process. There will always be the provision of internet eventually in any situation where perhaps, you know, internet connectivity failed the ad hoc officials or the electoral officials at a particular polling unit at a particular time. It happens everywhere. If you're using your device right now and you do not have internet connectivity at the moment, you would eventually get internet connectivity. So the provision for manual backup flies in the face of reason. It doesn't hold water. And as has been, you know, advanced already, it's going to create room for a lot of mischief. Because even under the current Electoral Act, you know, under the current system, many cases abound about the many discrepancies between what was signed, you know, recalling now Forms EC8A, which is the ground norm of our electoral process, discrepancies between what was signed by party agents and what was uploaded. And this is a very, very big room for another legacy of, you know, a hitch, you know, which is what former INEC chairman, what's his name again, you know, gave to the electoral process. Is going to create room for that yet again.
Yes, Mahmoud Yakubu.
Yes, Mahmoud Yakubu. So the room for manual backup, the proviso for manual backup makes, you know, a mockery of electronic transmission of results. And then there's the argument entirely as well that what Nigerians should be advocating for really should be electronic voting, because if we had electronic voting and electronic transmission of results, then we'd have a fail-safe electoral process. Because under this current system, where many parts of the electoral process, you know, still resort to manual, there are a lot of, you know, rooms for, you know, mischief making in the process. So what are the options open to Nigerians on this one? Should the advocacy continue? Should the Occupy National Assembly continue until Nigerians get, you know, what they require to ensure that their votes count? Perhaps that's the questions we should be asking. So,
for you to clarify, at the end of the day, what is left now, if the committee has been set up, is that the harmonization will either adopt that of the House of Reps or the Senate. It was in 2021 when INEC came out and said 93% of their polling units have internet access, even if it's 1 or 2G. It does. And then they also talked about the remaining 7%, they'll use GSM technology, some sort of. So INEC is not even complaining. The politicians, I don't know what exactly their trouble is with this. So at the end of the day, this flies in the face of reason. So there's no reason to provide, to give a caveat in terms of a provisor. So I hope that the House of Reps will be able to fight this battle to win this. Else, we're back to the doldrums from EC8A, as a matter of fact. But for me, anybody who is arguing about internet capability as a reason for providing for alternative, maybe doesn't understand what is going on. First, maybe you don't understand how the BVAS works with the greatest sense of respect, and maybe you should ask INCC and INEC what exactly they are capable of. It's as simple as that.
So that's where we are right now. In case you're wondering, what exactly is the crux of this matter? Because I can tell you guys, a lot of people are just catching up with what is playing out. So on the floor of the Senate yesterday, the lawmakers decided to, well, against the yearnings of a lot of people, the civil society groups, saying let's have real-time electronic transmission, and just electronic transmission. But the Senate said, you know what, let's set the real time aside. Let's have electronic transmission and a fallback, which is manual transmission in that sense. So that's really the bone of contention. But do not forget that the National Assembly is not made up of just the Senate, which is what we've said time and again. There is also the House of Representatives, and they do this work together. So the House of Reps also did its own yeoman's job, gave its own version of a story, so to speak. So today on the program, we're joined by the spokesperson of the House of Representatives. We're joined by Honorable Akin Rotimi Jr, who is a member representing Ekiti North 1 Federal Constituency in the House of Reps. Honorable, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Kayode and other moderators, and good morning, Nigerians. It's always a pleasure to engage.
You know, this is one of the biggest stories in the country right now, Honorable Rotimi. But I want to start from this. What is the position of the House of Representatives? What we saw on the floor of the Senate yesterday, does it align, does it mirror the clause that the House of Representatives came up with for that section, or clause 60 sub 3 on electronic transmission?
All right, thank you. So for us in the House of Representatives, we're committed to, following through with the legislative process that will, of course, lead to the eventual passage of a bill that reflects the yearnings of Nigerians. Of course, the House's version of, the bill that was passed in December, differs in a number of ways in some of the provisions from what it is that the Senate passed yesterday. So we're committed to the process. Right now we have a conference committee, which is, the prescription of the standing rules of both the House and the Senate. A conference committee made of 12 people from the House would also engage with 12 people from the Senate, sit together to be able to harmonize all of these issues into one single bill and be able to bring it back to the floor for it to be eventually passed. I must make mention that that committee is a bipartisan committee, so it has both people from the opposition and people from the ruling party spread across Nigeria to ensure that as much as possible, all voices, from different interests are also be able to be captured in the process. But overall, what you see again is that, a lot of Nigerians need to also understand that even the House's version that was passed in December, we didn't arrive at it as just the House, because from several months, before the eventual passage, the House Committee on Electoral Reforms, together with the Senate Committee on Electoral Reforms, had resolved into a joint committee, had, several retreats, several engagements, looked at the provisions together, and much more importantly, we had also had input from civil society. We'd engaged INEC, we'd engaged even the judicial sector, we'd engaged everybody to ensure that what it is that we have eventually is, reflective of what it is that Nigerians are agitating about. So this narrative about, Nigerians on the outside agitating against the Senate of the House is not quite accurate. We, even for those of us in the House, I'm sure that many members and many senators would also be on the streets agitating, if they had the opportunity as well. We all want, to have an electoral act that, would ensure free, fair, and credible elections. And I believe that that is what that the Senate and also the House is committed to. So Nigerians need to trust the process. Nigerians need to understand the process, which is that at this point in time, we're going to resolve into a conference committee to be able to harmonize the provisions and come out with a unified electoral bill.
So what is your provision? Just to be clear, what does your own version of Clause 60 sub 3 say in actual terms, so we can just lay this bare for Nigerians?
Well, yes, clearly what we have in the provision, which is why civil society and all of other stakeholders rose up to really make a lot of complaints, is simply about transmission, real-time transmission of results via the IREV. But the challenge here, which the Senate, again, you must understand the very nature of both chambers. The Green Chamber, of course, a lot younger, a lot more, progressive in some terms. The Senate, they're a little more careful. They're a little older. They're a little more careful, a little more deliberate. So it's normal. And that's the essence of a bicameral legislature. That, they thought that, look, let's be a little careful here. We're trying to pass a bill within the context of infrastructure challenges. I know that, the previous moderator had talked about, but we can't, it's not one size fits all. The fact that you're in Lagos, you're in Abuja, and you have, stable internet does not mean that, some locations that are far-flung would also be able to enjoy that same privilege. So what they've done is a fail-safe provision that, yes, you transmit the results electronically via IREV, but if there is any challenge, right, then it can be backed up by, the manual transmission of the results. So again, I wouldn't want to preempt the outcome, because you must understand that both provisions are now before a 12-man committee. For us, we have members in the House that are from the APC, from the Labour Party, from ABGA, right, and other parties involved. So for us, it's nothing out of the parliamentary process. It's normal for us to have disparate opinions about how to move such a critical bill forward. But I think Nigerians must understand that the legislature were with you, were with Nigerians on the agitation for free, fair, and credible elections.
Honorable, as much as I understand where you're coming from about the conservative nature against the vibrant nature of the conservative nature of the Senate, as against the vibrant nature of the House, given experience and age, but we must contextualize it based on facts. And the facts available to us, remember, we're all stakeholders. You, the elected, and those of us that are electorate, especially those of us who are journalists. There's no room you enter, apart from when you're planning your politics. When it comes to election, we all enter the same rooms, from the field to the collation center.
Yes. Media and civil society were part of the process.
That's why I'm saying that. So I want you to intervene based on fact. I know you're speaking for the House, but the committee will do their work. The BVAS was designed with the mindset that internet penetration is not everywhere. INEC is not stupid. They are aware. That's why your accreditation doesn't need internet capability. The snapping doesn't need internet capability. What requires internet capability is the upload. So it's like sending an SMS and you don't have network, you don't have data. Until you have data or credit or whatever, then it goes. The whole idea to differentiate this election from 2027 is to say there is no reason under the sun, technologically and logically, even if you live in the remotest part of Nigeria, where that device should not be used to snap. At least begin with snapping. We can discuss when it will be uploaded later. So that is why the argument against the Senate position is strong. So yes.
Even sorry to cut you, even that argument is very valid. And just to make it even simpler for a lot of our listeners, if you send an email in an area where there's no internet, right, what happens is that it's hovering somewhere, and then when you get to a place where there's internet, it automatically uploads, right? So yes, there are those provisions, and I don't think Nigerians really, it's a lot of distrust of the system, and a lot of people really believing that some people want to steal elections and all of that. But it's simple. The provision, even the Senate's provision now, is simple. If at every polling unit, Nigerians are vigilant, right? To ensure that they follow through with the process. They're at the polling units, and they ensure, all the polling agents ensure that at the stage of the polling units, those results are transmitted. If there's no issues with the internet, then you don't need to worry about, the Form EC8A. You don't need to worry very much about that. That's just like a backup also to be able to verify, because every agent, every party agent, the security officers, everybody is given a copy of the results that are uploaded. So it's really, I think that we should allow the process, to work. We should remember again, this is the amendment of the Electoral Act 2022.
Honorable.
Now we are moving. The reason we're, just a minute, the reason we're at this position, right, is because of issues around judicial interpretation, right, of those provisions. And, you know, the judiciary, Nigerians, and everyone felt that, you know, we should be a little more explicit, you know, in the Electoral Act, so that it's justiciable, so that, you know, it's something that the courts can actually recognize that there's a provision in the Electoral Act as against just the guidelines of INEC. So we also don't want to, you know, create a law that would also be problematic in terms of judicial interpretation.
Honorable, so my apologies.
Yes.
If we're to be, because when you're drafting laws and extant laws, laws that guide a system.
When you are amending extant laws.
When you're amending or drafting any law, you need to think POVs in terms of mischief in mind. Now, perhaps if I was drafting drafting that law, I may put a clause or a line that doesn't just say electronic transmission. I may actually say that the polling officer must capture I'm very deliberate with my words, capture the form EC8A as countersigned by everybody. We can take away the word real time and argue about it, because even when you're doing accreditation, what does the law say in section, I think, is this section 47 or sections also of the old law? It says that if you come for accreditation and for any reason the BVAS or whatever is not working, another one will be reintroduced. If it doesn't work, then INEC has 24 hours to organize another election in that place, based on the fact that if the outcome of that election can substantially affect the entire outcome of that, outcome of that, those elections at that particular point can affect the entirety of the bigger outcome. So all of these are being provided for. So can we safely say to Nigerians now, based on what we should be expecting, that no matter how remote your area is, do not let the polling officer leave that place without snapping that document?
Precisely the point. Precisely the point. And that is what even the Senate provisions has provided for, right? To recognize that it is mandatory, right, for the elections to be, the results at the polling unit, you know, is transmitted electronically. The fail-safe, you know, because, again, you are saying that your argument is that the entire country has coverage, has internet, but again, we're talking about, you know, the whole of Nigeria, the interlands, everywhere, you know, not just the urban centers, right, that, you know, might have issues around internet penetration. So people have argued and said, you know, everybody should make sure that at the polling unit, you know, if there is no internet, you are able to hotspot, you're able to provide whatever, you're able to make sure that, you know, the point about it is really about Nigerians remaining vigilant at the polling unit. And I believe that, you know, the laws that would, the Electoral Act that would eventually be passed, you know, would ensure that, you know, Nigerians are able to play that role of vigilance at the polling unit level to ensure that results are actually transmitted. Yeah.
Let's not forget what brought us here, Honorable, and that was several committees, public hearings, and both chambers of the National Assembly.
Civil society and
indeed,
media.
yes. Both chambers relied on recommendations from civil society, from PLAC, and other technical experts. And so, if you're saying that the Senate is perhaps conservative and the House of Reps is more, you know, liberal because it has a lot of younger representatives, in the final analysis, both chambers represent the generality of Nigerians. Senators represent senatorial districts comprising local governments. And besides even, you know, the recommendations, there was a lot of, you know, advocacy from young Nigerians on the demand for electronic transmission of results and other key recommendations in the Electoral Act Amendment 2026. So I'm asking you a direct question. Has the Senate represented the quantum of Nigerians in this decision that it has made on the Electoral Act Amendment 2026?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. First of all, I don't speak for the Senate, but I believe that the Senate has acted in the best interest of Nigerians. It's part of the legislative process. Remember that all of that review, all of that the amendments and, you know, feedback from civil society and all of that, that resulted in the recommendations was at committee level. It's part of the, you know, parliamentary process for them to come back to plenary and say, this is what it is that we've worked on. And it's part of the process as well for everyone to be able to vet and say, okay, yes, we like these provisions. I have, you know, reservations about these provisions. Let's look at this a little more closely. So that is part of the process, which it is that the Senate is, you know, is constitutionally mandated to be able to do. So it's not an issue for the Senate as part of the parliamentary process to say, let's take a closer look. There's nothing outside, you know, that's been done outside of our standing rules, the Senate standing rules and the parliamentary procedure. The important thing is that we're at a point right now.
Honorable Rotimi,
we're at a point right now. Yes, please.
Then it appears as if even you are not listening to Nigerians if you say that the Senate has represented Nigerians by its decision.
The Senate has represented Nigerians, you know, by ensuring that they're following through with the parliamentary process.
But Nigerians disagree. Right? What Nigerians are demanding is electronic transmission of results. They do not want a proviso.
And that is what... No. That is what a good number of senators, you know, are also demanding, and which has reflected in the outcomes of
so are you saying,
their debate yesterday.
Are you saying that what the Senate, what a good number of senators demand is more important than what Nigerians want, which is the fulcrum of democracy?
What the senators are demanding is also reflective of what it is that Nigerians want, which is that they want free, fair, and credible elections. And that is why you'd see, you can call it pressure or anything, but the fact is that the outcome of the process yesterday also showed that the Senate shifted grounds. Again, I don't speak for the Senate, I speak for the House. And
but you also speak for Nigerians. We're not practicing, Honorable, we're not practicing an autocracy. We're supposedly practicing a democracy. So if you're saying that what the senators want is more important than what the generality of Nigerians want, then Nigerians,
you don't need to put the words in my mouth.
Nigerians may be putting a question mark on the representation of the National Assembly that they're getting. If you're saying, because you are saying now that what the senators want is more important than what Nigerians want.
Well, those are your words.
No, those are your words. Those are your words. You said just moments ago that what senators want is also important. That's what you said. We can play back.
The Senate has acted in the best interest of Nigerians by taking feedback from the public, right? In arriving at those provisions yesterday. I don't speak for the Senate, I don't speak for senators.
But you speak for Nigerians. For the House
in a bicameral legislature.
No, you speak for Nigerians.
I speak for Nigerians.
We can play back. If you are amending what you have said now, it's fine.
You are trying
I'm not trying. I'm not
to push a narrative.
I'm not pushing any narrative. I'm quoting your words.
No, you're not. And you have a role, media, you have a role in properly educating Nigerians. The Senate has acted yesterday, right, in passing a version of the bill. I don't speak for the Senate, and I've told you that the point in which we are is that the Senate has nominated a 12-man conference committee that's going to meet with the House. I can speak about the House's position. I can speak about the fact that the National Assembly as a whole is working to ensure that what it is that we pass eventually is a reflection of the yearnings of Nigerians for free, fair, and credible elections. We have to also ensure that we adequately, you know, educate Nigerians about the process. The fact that the Senate thought that, oh yes, we had recommendations, let's take a closer look, let us debate. They didn't exclude opposition members of the Senate from plenary when they did that. It was a decision that everyone in the Senate chamber representing different constituencies, you know, looked at the provisions and decided to arrive at what it is that they did. And they passed it on to the conference committee.
All right.
So the point we are as Nigerians now is to ensure that we also put a bit of pressure, right? It's normal. And that's why you see that yesterday, protesters, you know, came to the House and to the National Assembly, and some of us went to engage with them. It's normal for Nigerians. We should encourage the culture of dialogue. We should encourage the culture of civic engagement, you know, to ensure that, you know, leaders are listening, you know, and, you know, those that are following are also able to express their thoughts on what it is that they want us to do. So please, the media has a crucial role to play. Nigerians can be assured, right, that as it is now, the Senate and the House are dissolving into a conference committee to be able to deliberate on the different provisions. Now, everyone is looking, and I think the media as well has done a lot in just some sort of reductionist narrative about just electronic transmission. What of the other provisions that, differ? What of the issue of, accreditation at the polling units, in which, the House had recommended that, even if you don't have the PVC, other forms of national ID can be used. What of the issue of the number of days that the Senate has also recommended should be reduced for from 360 to 180. There's so many provisions, but when the media, right, fixates on a particular issue and does not broaden the conversation, you're not working in the best interest of Nigerians.
Well, Honorable, this is not about the media.
The issue of electronic transmission of voters is very, very important. It's as important to you as it is to us.
All right, Honorable, let me come in quickly because of time. You made those points interesting, and I must say that consistently on this show and across board, we have highlighted those issues around even the punitive measures for those who buy voter cards. We have highlighted it. The Senate decided to reduce it rather than increase the years. We have also raised issues. Pardon me, Honorable. Right, pardon me, Honorable. So we've spoken about these things extensively and will continue to. The point is to thrash this electronic transmission bit out, so Nigerians understand, and that's why we have you on the show, to explain your side. Let us understand the reasoning. That's the essence of democracy. But I want to put this in practice, because it's still a proposal from the Senate. You have your own recommendation. They have their own recommendation. It is not law just yet until the harmonization, eventual vote, and then we'll see if the president signs it into law this year, as has been said. But let's put it into practice with the current proposal by the Senate. So how will this work? Once voting is conducted, walk us through the process. So once they use the beavers to snap the result and send it, upload it, at what point did they then decide that, oh, let us switch to manual? Help us properly contextualize this so Nigerians understand the flow.
I can't speak and preempt, a legislative process. Where we are right now is that the Senate, I believe the Senate spokesperson was with you yesterday to shed more light on the issues. I can't speak on the provisions of the Senate. What I know right now is that the provisions of the Senate and the provisions of the House are before a joint Senate-House conference committee to be able to harmonize the process. When we arrive at a unified version of the Electoral Act, which is transmitted to the president, I'll be happy to engage with you on what those provisions are. But at this time, I don't think I need to preempt the eventual outcomes of that process. So I think that, our role right now, and, for me, as a legislator, I also have the duty to talk to my colleagues, in the conference committee and say, these are my own thoughts. These are the thoughts of a lot of people that I believe that I represent. These are the thoughts of civil society that, I also came out of, to be able to ensure that we keep the pressure on, to be able to have an eventual outcome that's reflective of what it is that Nigerians want. You don't need to, have guests on your show and put words into their mouth about Nigeria,
Honorable,
saying that
so let's come in. Let me come in here, Honorable, so that we're clear. We need to educate Nigerians, all of us. So first and foremost, I've seen people argue about transmission or real time, and they're thinking it's votes. For the records, it is results. Results would mean that...
It's results.
All processes are being concluded. Everybody has countersigned and results. Because I hear some people saying, we don't vote electronically, how do we transmit? So it's result. But what we're trying to say here is that Nigerians don't trust the political class. I just want to lay it bare. You must understand. I'm sure you know that already. I don't need to tell you that. Nigerians don't trust
it's historical, and that's what we'll keep on working on
and
to regain the trust of Nigerians.
Both Nigerians and the politicians, based on what played out in 2023, are both traumatized, especially around the presidential election and all of that. So you can see why, For instance, in a football match...
Is that your thoughts? Is that your thoughts about... Are you giving your own thoughts about
I am saying that there was a lot of...
concluded?
Mr. Rotimi, just calm down. There was a lot... There was an upset...
Yes, because the generality of Nigerians voted on an election. You're not going to make this partisan. You're not going to make this about the 2023 election outcomes.
Mr. Rotimi, if you allow me land, maybe you can understand.
I beg your pardon.
No.
Just a minute.
Don't put words in my mouth.
This is not
Hold on.
This is not an opposition position.
Mr. Rotimi, the ruling party, APC legislators are as much invested, right, in the outcomes of an electoral act that serves free, fair, and credible elections. Honorable, if you can,
so don't say Nigerians are traumatized about the outcomes of the 2023 elections.
If only you listen, you will hear my deductions. Politicians were shocked, especially the legislator. We saw an upset in that election. That is the premise of the elected being traumatized. The issue around, which has been resolved by the Supreme Court, can you just hold on, Honorable? Can you just calm down? Let me conclude my thought, please. I allowed you to talk. The part of the electorate here is to the effect of, we were in the media, we were here to collate results, and we didn't see those results till the next day. That is the premise of the trauma. Everybody is now trying to protect their own end to say, how do we make this system better for both the elected and the electorate? I hope you are clear on my position now. So,
we're committed to that process as well. Yeah.
So I hope, that's why I said you should have waited for me to land so you understand where I'm coming from. So the point now is that Nigerians are pushing that the conference committee adopts the position of the House. Is that a fair push from a lot of the Nigerians? Of course, there are people that want the House, the position of the Senate.
Well, it's fair. If I, you know, again, I speak for the House. I wouldn't want to preempt the outcomes by sharing my own personal opinion. But you must understand that the House is made up of 360 members. You know, very many are, you know, come from an activist background, come from a background where, you know, we want to see, you know, free, fair, and credible elections. So, you know, my view, it's not even just my view. My view, the view of majority of you know, people in the House is also that we're talking to our colleagues to ensure that whatever outcomes, you know, serves the best interest of Nigerians. So we should allow and trust the process. We should of course, keep the pressure on. We know what is happening even internally, you know, engaging our colleagues, sharing our thoughts and our ideas, you know, on those provisions, which is the parliamentary process. So it's a hot topical issue. Yesterday, I was with protesters engaging, trying to educate and trying to share, you know, to educate Nigerians on the process, where we are exactly, you know, with the process, because we believe that Nigerians have a voice and that voice should be used, and we believe that we should listen, you know, to Nigerians, and that should be reflected, you know, in the legislative process. So that's where we are, and we're committed to the process, to following it through. You know, the Senate President has said yesterday that, you know, is going to ensure that the process is expedited so that we are able to come out with a unified version that's passed and transmitted to the President very quickly within a week or two. Right. That is what, you know, we want. That is what we're agitating for. And most importantly, to look through all of the provisions, not only on electronic voting, but on other provisions, you know, to ensure that. So it's not about the Senate and the House. There are arguments, you know, 360 you know, days for announcement of the electoral calendar of notice, as against 180. There's a lot of merits and demerits.
Absolutely.
Of electronic transmission like the House has passed. There are a lot of merits, you know, compared as well to what it is that the Senate has proposed. We're going to look at it. Please, let us trust Nigerians. Let us be careful about shaping narratives about this is an opposition agenda. The House doesn't want, you know, to pass this. The Senate doesn't want to pass this. The National Assembly is committed to passing an electoral act that serves the best interests of Nigerians and will result in free, fair, and credible elections.
I would like you to make just one commitment as we wind down. Once this is sorted and harmonized, you'll be one of the very first people who will have to then break these issues down and really operationalize them. Is that something you're sure
Absolutely.
All right.
Continuous engagement is what it is that we're going to do. Not only myself, You know, the chairman of the House Committee on Electoral Matters has been on your show several times, on your station several times. We'll continue to engage.
Right.
Remember, we'll continue to work to earn the trust of Nigerians.
And that's the idea entirely. We must thank you, Honorable Akin Rotimi, spokesperson of the Nigerian House of Representatives and member representing Ekiti North 1 Federal Constituency. It's quite interesting that both the spokespersons of the House and the Senate are from Ekiti. We need to understand the secret. But, Honorable, we wish you the very best.
Thank you very much, and good morning again, Nigerians.
There you go. If you have more questions, more concerns, send them in. That is the essence of democracy. But we'll take a moment now. And when we return, there is more for you on the Electoral Act, those sections that give you concerns, plus how the dailies are reporting the big stories. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. So, let's get to what the dailies are saying today. Oh boy, guys, where do we start from? So there's a lot.
This is Nigeria, so let us start with this Nigeria.
Okay, I'll start with New Telegraph. New Telegraph newspaper. Senate approves e-transmission of results, manual collation as backup. The writers here, as chamber witnesses rowdy session, raises conference committee membership to 12. PDP orders kicks a approved version of bill not acceptable. Cosmetic setback to electoral integrity. Rotimi Amechi said, I joined Occupy National Assembly protest. So I think this matter is what we've discussed over and over. We just got off that back and forth with Honorable Rotimi. I think sometimes I didn't get some of the point we're trying to raise, but that's the engagement we need to have. But at the end of the day, as I've said at the very start, that giving an option to the issue of manual collation, I don't think is progress. The reason is simple, by logic and technology. So BVAS, which is the bone of contention, which is the joy of the electoral process, is a game changer. BVAS replaced the card reader, and the way BVAS is designed is such that it has envisaged that we're a developing country, and there's a possibility that not everywhere we have network. So what did they do? That's why you can only vote at a specific polling unit. It is deliberate. That is only at a specific polling unit you can vote, because that your polling unit is where you have all your, the data of everybody who registered there, their biometrics captured. Without internet, they can do their accreditation, capture you and all of that. And then the only thing that requires internet is when upload is required, not snapping, not capture. That is the argument here. And as soon as you capture, which is why in the last election we saw people's faces, we saw, I think, people's legs, and we saw mutilated copies or not legible copies of the Form EC8A. Because the way it is designed is that as soon as you snap it, that's it, Otilo, it has gone. You can't trace it back. So if you mistakenly snap your arm, your wrist, that will be the result of that polling unit, because there's nothing you can do about that except INEC resolves it at that high level. So that's why we're saying there is no reason for providing, let's say it clearly, there's no reason to provide for manual collation, because INEC has envisaged it. INEC even said in 2021 that 93% have at least 1 or 2G and then GSM connectivity. Let's even accept without conceding that it's even worse than that, let's say 70%. Just snap it. So I think what Nigerians should watch out for, because we don't know what is going to be the final law. What happens is that the conference committee, the 12 members will meet, they will debate these things again at that level. So what will happen is they will either adopt the one that was passed by the House that says real-time transmission of results and all of that, or they'll adopt the one that is passed by the Senate and said, yes, electronic transmission with the provisor. One will be the outcome of that process that will now be harmonized, and then they will look at it clause by clause in the finality to send to the president. So we're saying there should not be room, at least from my own enlightened point of view, there should not be room for manual collation. Reason to have any form of manual collation, because capturing that EC8A doesn't require internet. It is upload. So capture it first. So voters must make sure that at the polling unit, make sure it is snapped.
You know, Jeffrey, we should make an emphasis on the point because it's important. I wonder if Honorable Rotimi was listening to what was being said as much as what was not being said was contained in what was being said. And this is the reason I'm making this point. Electronic transmission of result is pivotal. It is the hinge, or the hinges, if you like, of where all the other electoral reforms proposal in this Electoral Act Amendment Bill rests.
Okay.
Because if you're saying that, okay, we should also amend INEC's powers to, you know, rescind its decision on a particular election result, if the election was not transparent at the electronic transmission level, then it makes a nonsense of that, because that can also be manipulated. If you go through all of the other proposals for amendment as well, the opportunity for e-voting, it rests also on electronic transmission of result. If you're talking about early voting, diaspora voting, all the other amendments, they all rest on electronic transmission of results. And it was making emphasis on Nigerians should trust the process. That is also evident on the trust deficit that Nigerians have for the political class, for the political elite, and the delay that the Senate, you know, demonstrated in getting here in the first place is suspect. He doesn't speak for the Senate, but he speaks for a generality of Nigerians. So trying to sit on the fence or speak for the Senate also goes to show, you know, where the political class stands on this one. So we must make the point about how pivotal electronic transmission of results is. And that's what, you know, this Nigeria doubles down on this morning. And it gives us a vivid imagery of, you know, what brought us here in the first place. Let's go to this Nigeria this morning and look at how it captures the headline. E-transmission of results, yes, then no, with an exclamation mark there. And we see Senate in dramatic U-turn at rowdy session, INEC to transmit electronically and manually when hitches occur. And we also see the role of the opposition in yesterday's rowdy session. First of all, calling for a division, and then, you know, making a U-turn on the initial position expressed. That also should be scrutinized. What should we expect from the bipartisan e-conference committee? Well, that's also another thing to look forward to. Will it adopt, you know, the position of the House of Representatives, which is what the generality of Nigerians want, or will it go the way of the Senate? Or is this all, you know, premeditated in the first place to look believable? Well, this final juncture where we are, which is not final, this juncture where we are, makes it also, you know, compelling to ask that question. Was it premeditated to look credible, with the House adopting a position different from the Senate? Well, there's more to reflect on the front pages this morning, Coyote.
Well, next up is Vanguard newspaper. Leads, again, no surprises here with the Electoral Act. Rowdy session as Senate okays conditional e-transmission of results. I mean, I know the conditional cash transfer. So now it looks like we have, or we'll be having conditional e-transmission as well. Lots of explainers. But just to highlight two other points, you see the big picture there shows former Minister of Transportation, Mr. Rotimi Amechi, was a former member of the APC, now ADC member, flanked by his son and others protesting at the National Assembly yesterday. In fact, he made a comment that his son, who's a doctor, is there just in case protesters are hurt. And you see right next to that story, or that picture, something from El Rufai, also former member of the APC, now member of the ADC, saying Tinubu and I are parallel lines that'll never meet. For context, they were members of the same party a matter of a few years ago, three of them. I'm talking about Mr. Amechi, Madam Nasir El Rufai, and the president, members of the same party, Chomi and all of that. But now you think that they were sworn enemies from the scratch with all of the things you're seeing playing out. Politics, that is a game, but you have to understand the game and not get carried away. That's the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
You know, it's when I listen to people and I'm asking myself, it's very unfortunate that sometimes people feel that everything has to be political. It's a sad thing, and And it happens with ruling parties. When PDP was here, when you take a position that is in the interest of the people, the PDP will say you are against them. Now, when you take a position that is in the interest of the people, the APC say, like Mr. Rotimi wants to say, that it's about, no, I'm not interested in who wins an election. It's none of my business who wins. We're interested in the process. And let's educate Nigerians again. So 2 things you must remember. First, we don't vote electronically, so we can't transmit electronically. The real-time transmission is the results. Because I'm re-emphasizing this because I've heard a lot of things. I'm misunderstanding of the results. Second, BVAS was designed deliberately to be sure that whether there is internet or not, the BVAS works. It doesn't need internet for accreditation. It doesn't need internet for capture. It only needs internet for transmission. So at polling units, we must all make sure that it's captured. As a matter of fact, the law kind of envisages that sometimes even the polling agents, because not all political parties can have polling agents in every polling unit. 76,000 polling units across the country. Not every party has that capacity. But the voters can see when it's counted, sorted, and signed off, and then they can know what came out of that process. So at the end, let's go to the Daily Independent as we wrap up. Tinubu asks governors to get to work on jobs, health, infrastructure, pledges shift towards pragmatic, inclusive economic model, NEC to expand all theft community, partner private sector. I think this is long overdue. The president has been screaming and shouting. Remember the last time he met with progressive governors of his party. They are 29 now. Progressive governors are about 29 now. Because we have Accord, ABGA, Labour, and then 4 PDP. So, for the governors to get to work, given the big monies they are receiving in terms of Naira terms, and when we get over this Electoral Act, we'll have to face these subnationals to see what exactly they are doing. On this, I agree with the president that some of the subnationals are not doing enough to support some of the efforts of the federal government, as a matter of fact. But hey, we'll take a break after this moment. That's much we can take on the dailies. So when we come back after this break, we'll be talking to the AAC presidential candidate in the last election, Omoyele Sowore. Will be joining us from our Abuja studios as we expand the state of the nation. Stay with us.
Welcome back. It's still the morning brief right here on Channels Television, and we're making progress, of course, on our conversation on the Senate's approval of electronic transmission of results with manual backing, while also looking at other subjects affecting the state of the nation. And joining us now is Mr. Omoyele Sowore, presidential candidate of the AAC in 2023 election, and of course, human rights activist. He's right there in our Abuja studio. Mr. Sowore, good morning. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start this way. It was interesting to see you yesterday with other new members of the civil society talking about former Minister of Transportation, former Minister of Sports. It was interesting to see some members of the political class in the trenches with you. But we'll get to that part of the conversation later on. But let's weigh in on the high point of yesterday, which was the Senate's decision to approve electronic transmission of results with manual backing. Of course, that has drawn a number of reactions, especially with the explanation provided by the Senate spokesman yesterday on our political program. You know, how are you weighing in on what the Senate's explanation for its position to be on this critical part of our electoral process?
I don't think I need any explanation from a spokesperson of the Senate. What we know or we heard is that the provision for electronic transmission of results wasn't made mandatory. And what we asked for and what led to most of us to join the barricades yesterday was for them to be very clear that this must be made mandatory, that those beavers machine, which are in two modes, that's why they call them bimodal verification machines, would be able to take a shot of the results and transmit to INEC portal. It may happen immediately if there's network, but it could happen wherever it finds network. But what is most important is that a process must be started as soon as the elections are concluded, that when the shot of the final result paperwork is taken, it will go to the IREP portal where people can immediately view each of the polling units across the country. That was not made mandatory in what was passed by the Senate, according to what we know. What they did was to be clever by half in saying, well, wherever there is no opportunity to transmit, we'll have it back, we'll accept the hard copy. And what that means when you deal with these characters is that they will always then go to court and say, well, this is not mandatory. And the judges will rule that there's no provision in the law that says it's mandatory. So you still go back to your hard-coded way of reporting election results that had made elections very, very incredible process. When I say incredible, you know what I mean. Like, you know, that's why people don't trust the electoral process. This is just to instill a little bit of trust. I said it yesterday and I'll repeat it again. I am not even a fan of these old systems. By now, we should be doing what they're doing in India. India has 900 million registered voters, and they use electronic voting as their own way of expressing the wishes of the people. And those are almost foolproof. I don't think you hear a lot of tribunal sittings in India after 900 million people vote. And we have only 90 million people here. We should be able to go for electronic voting. And like I said, if you can vote, you know, using these electronic processes to send money to people and do other transactions that are confidential, why can't we vote, you know, from our homes instead of having to roam the world, vote, and then at the end of the day, the elections are not even credible, and you end up electing people who you didn't vote for.
Let's look at the House's position against the Senate's position. The House is, in December, approved electronic transmission from each polling unit to the IREF portal in real time, and each transmission to be done simultaneously with the physical collation of results. With this, you know, contrast between the position of the House and that of the Senate, does it give some form of credibility to the legislation process of the National Assembly as a whole? Should we trust the National Assembly?
Obviously, we can't trust them. Even when these two positions are harmonized, which is what they said they would do, we still have to come through the fine print of what is in the final law they are going to pass. What I suspect, and I know these people to do, is that they're not worried about you, they're not worried about the public. They are covering up in advance for what will happen in the courtrooms in the future. They don't want a situation where the judges are hamstrung by a definitive word, shall or must. What we're saying here is that the language of these electoral acts must make it mandatory for elections to be transmitted. And wherever that is violated, you must be able to provide credible evidence or excuse. And then, you know, the threshold to prove that this wasn't done is not on the side of those who are rigging an election. And that is exactly what they are trying to avoid. They don't want to make it mandatory. And the excuse is that we don't have network in 9 states. You know, so if you don't make it mandatory, you know, they can just shut down all the networks in the country. It doesn't cost them anything to shut down networks in the country. All these people who are telling you that there's no network in the country, there's nowhere in the country that you can't reach them, because there are several ways to get network to work on these devices. You know, a bimodal machine, or a beavers as they call it, is something that can work with any kind of network. And people have said that, you know, INEC should deploy Starlink network to power them. That's another possibility. but I think that their excuse is not credible. Because even in places where they shut down network deliberately in those years, terrorists are sending live, live content to the internet on TikTok, on Facebook, Twitter. So this excuse that there is no network in that state is just another baloney on the part of these guys. They don't want transparent elections because they know that if elections are transparent, 90% of them will not make it to the National Assembly. And, of course, the presidency and other elected positions. They know that.
All right, Mr. Sowore, I want us to, again, try to operationalize or do a real-time enactment of what we have now and how it will change significantly if we were to have the provision strictly electronic transmission. So once you're done voting, right, the votes are collated manually. So manual voting, manual collation, and then they fill it out. That's the presiding officer fills it out on the form EC8A. That's, I don't know whether to call it infamous now or famous form EC8A. So they say AAC has this number of votes, the APC, the ADC, PDP has these number of votes. Now, what happens is with the BVAS, the PO is meant to take a picture of that EC8A and upload it to the INEC result viewing portal, IREV. Right? And then they transport both the EC8A and the BVAS to the Ward Collation Center, where it is also tabulated in that sense manually. But at least the EC8A should already be on IREV, where Nigerians can view. And it is also mandated to a large extent that you're meant to compare, at least with this new proposal that people are pushing for, you're meant to compare the physical copy that you get at the Ward Collation Center with what is on the IREV to see if there's any discrepancy. Does it match, right? So with this new provision or this new proposal that you're asking for, how does it significantly change what is already in practice? Because the IREV is a result viewing portal. It cannot be used for collation in that sense, right?
Yes. If you listen to me yesterday at the rally or the protest, I said it that even in the best of circumstances, the IREV is a portal for viewing rigged or unrigged election results. That's the truth. But for those who are interested in incremental progress, they're saying, even at that, let's just be able to view these results as soon as they have been collated, so that nothing more happens after we have gone to sleep, because a lot of things happen overnight. So that is what people are demanding for, and that's what I went there to support or solidarize. But my preference is not even this. This is, in my view, outdated, because even in circumstances where the IREV is functional at 100% capacity, you are basically viewing a result that has already been decided whether it is rigged or not. And in circumstances where the elections have been rigged, which they do regardless, you are only looking at the result that has been processed by the demons at the polling units. But people are saying, regardless, let's have that. And I support that. And that is why I said, look, if people can have more faith in the system because certain things are in place, then we can step on that podium and demand for greater things. But I'm saying it publicly here, that if you ask me what's my preference, that's an outdated process. And I feel like maybe part of the reason why they're doing this is because they don't want the public to ask for more serious, transparent means of electioneering. So they get you bogged down with the old ones so that you don't ask for what is new and what is creative and what is progressive. But we also cannot discountenance what the public wants as the way forward for credible elections, since we don't have much time right now. Because If you are demanding for electronic voting, they'll tell you it's impossible in the next 1 year. I had a meeting between the INEC chairman and political parties last week, and he said he was in India, and the Indians told him, why are you wasting your time with beavers? Because almost the only country in the world that's using beavers, Nigeria. I don't know. You rarely find it. Even if you Google the word beavers, it keeps taking you to Nigeria. That means it's not a popular electioneering device globally. But that's what they use. And they told the Indians told him that we can help you provide electronic voting. And what electronic voting does is that you just go there, you put in your name, it shows you that you're a registered voter, and it gives you options for the ballot papers digitally. You look at it and say, which party do you want to vote for? You check it, it asks you, are you sure? You said yes. You print, and it sends a copy of your result to your email or your WhatsApp or your phone number. So you have a copy of who you vote for. And if they rig it, we can present that evidence in seconds. And that is what is done globally, But the fear most have raised is that, that could be tampered with. Well, I tell them, you have a global banking system that's almost digitalized. You can improve all of these processes by using technologies that are out there that makes this foolproof. But this physical hard coding of or handing over ballot papers and voting has shown over time to be fraud. And as we continue to use it, we are just dragging ourselves back when the rest of the world has moved on with better systems. Or you can have a process that is hybrid, where in places where people have no access to digital voting processes or methods, you can have these physical ones, and they are then easier to count, and you spend less time counting them because most people by 12 noon would have carried out voting across the country without having to go and queue up, without having to use all these outdated machines that are very expensive and very difficult to maintain. Because what will happen is that apart from just linking up with a network, a lot of these machines can be programmed in advance by INEC officials. A lot of them I've heard about in advance, and rig the outcome before you even get to the polling unit. So, but you need each of these voters, individual voters, educated voters, and a lot of them, I tell you, majority of Nigerians now know how to use devices to do a lot of things. Banking, they're using it to order food, you are using it to write exams, you are using it to view your results. I mean, why are we still, living in the Stone Age in this manner? This is some question we should ask us, a serious question about where we are in terms of making digital progress in this country. But I know they want this to become a controversy so that you won't have time to ask for any other thing.
Right.
And let me tell you, they're also planning to do elections in November. So that leaves you with less time to plan why they're already planned and they have everything set to it. And before you know it, they've come again.
Now that you paint it that way, it's important to properly analyze all of these issues, just sit down and get a better sense of it. And we've seen, as Bukola described them, new members joining, civil society, former members of the APC, former ministers in the Buhari government. Now on your side, in that sense, did you feel any sort of way seeing them, these same people that you've spoken against?
No, look, they're politicians, and they will always act on the side of the divide that butters their bread. And so I wasn't surprised to see them, but we welcome them. We welcome the new activists, but you know that they are fair weather friends to the activist community. They will do this for a little bit. After a while, they'll move back to their comfort zones. But, it just shows you that whenever their interests are affected, they know what to do. But, when their interest is not affected, they mock those of us who protest. They'll look at you, you're wasting your time. But it's very interesting to see Amechi yesterday. He even brought his son and claimed that his son is a doctor who wants to treat anybody that's injured by the police. You know, it's all a game, you know, but please just have a hearty laugh wherever you are about this, our new activist brothers and sisters.
I honestly can't help but
I saw Loretta Onoche there too, you know, who was one of the most rabid supporters of Buhari when Buhari was in power for 8 years. So, yeah, that's why I said welcome our new activist brothers and sisters. But one of the things I said when I was first invited to the protest, like, you know, I told the organizers on Sunday that it's also important that these politicians for whom you protest are forced to come and protest for their own, whatever interest it is. Because where you get the insult the most from is that they will never protest, they won't fight for anything, they don't endanger their lives. For those of us who do on a daily basis or on an hourly basis, they'll tell you that, oh, you know, that's your job, that's your destiny. And their destiny is to run the country to the ground while you pick up the pieces every year, every day, every hour, every week. So let them come and see how it feels like, you know, but this is not the real test of activism. Because I'm sure their police friends who are their brothers in crime decided not to tear gas yesterday because they were coming. If this was Sowore strictly protesting, you would have seen a different police force yesterday. In fact, when I arrived, they brought in, you know, the usual police who are very, very brutal. And I had to warn them that if they do anything funny, it will change the game.
We were wondering what sense to make of that new entry into the trenches yesterday, and that's why we resolved to ask you what it felt like having new members of civil society who were former ruling party members. And well, from what you have said, we hope that Nigerians can, you know, make the differentiation between what's really happening and, you know, what obtained before. But speaking of what we should be making sense of, let's transit to another important aspect of the state of the nation, just as critical as electronic transmission of results, which is the Port Harcourt refinery. After years of back and forth, we saw what seemed to work for a while, and then we saw a closure for repairs. And now what we have is the NNPCL saying reopening will be a waste of resources. What sense should we be making of the management so far of this critical infrastructure? And of course, the impact that it is supposed to have on what would be an overall consumption, domestic consumption of critical petroleum products.
You know, when they started the repairs of these refineries, I think I was on your show, I had been on one of these TV stations, that I said, these guys are just engaging in criminal activities. This is complete financial fraud. And I also mentioned that after the completion of the so-called completion of the turnaround maintenance that they were doing there, that you can only turn around, maintain a facility that exists. They already killed the refinery. They killed the refineries for their own private interest so that they can engage in massive importation of these products and scam the public. But what you should also understand is that it's the same country that can't repair its 2 refineries, I think we have 4 of it, that has helped Dangote to build this refinery. But when Dangote's refinery was commissioned, even though it had not started working then, there was nobody in this country, maybe no politician, maybe except myself, who didn't go there to commission it. They helped him find forex. They provided land for him, drove all the villagers away, and although he later claimed he paid Lagos State government officials $100 million that didn't make it to the real owners of the land. But these same people cannot repair their own refineries. If they were serious, by the time they started the repairs, they could have built completely new refineries in Port Harcourt, the Warri, and Kaduna. But they did this on purpose. They wanted to steal a lot of money. And the refinery repairs was something they know would appeal to the sentiment of the public. Maybe we'll have local refineries, refining, it will be cheaper. It's not as if they can't repair these platforms or even build new ones beside them. But they have no desire whatsoever. The desire was to steal, to defraud the country. And that is why we should not be talking about whether a refinery is open or not now. We should have people handcuffed, going in and out of courtrooms to explain where the money went and how to retrieve the money from them. They set up this scam just to defraud the country. That was the idea, that was the desire by the Buhari regime and all the men and women who participated in the so-called repairs. It wasn't meant to work, even though they allocated huge sums of money to repair or turn around or maintain the refineries. They knew it wasn't going to work. They started the same bogey in Kaduna, and I made it clear on TV that Kaduna doesn't have oil wells. They rely on pipelines to take this oil, crude oil, from the Niger Delta to Kaduna. Most of the pipelines have been ruined as of 20 years ago. But let me shock you. They also do provide funds for people during the Buhari regime who are protecting those pipelines to Kaduna that don't exist. In fact, one of the guys who used to get the contract sued me for libel, for reporting on this scam.
Well, and I know that the question for a lot of people is, will heads roll? If heads will roll, whose heads should roll in that sense? Because I think what has been lacking largely is consequences for these sorts of actions. So for you, should heads roll? If yes, what heads should roll? Or whose heads should roll? In a manner of speaking, that is.
Heads should roll. Yeah, this, is the ESCOs of NNPC who started the scam. Members of the Buhari regime who partook in sharing the funding from the Ministry of Finance, Central Bank. The paperwork is all over, it's littering all over the place. So we know the heads that should roll, but you don't have, you don't have the agencies that can make heads roll. So we're going to see some arrests, which has already happened, and there's going to be some media hype about it. And then, if your head is in the right party, it can't roll. So if they're already in APC, which most of them are already in, there's nothing that will happen to them. But I hope that someday, these guys will pay for the atrocities committed against the people of this country. It is crime against humanity what they did at all levels. But it should not be the type of rolling of heads that is not substantial. That is just just scratching the surface. Because these are deep financial scams that, if they are properly treated or they are properly handled, can revive the economy of this country, the recoveries from it, and then can prevent future thieves and robbers from carrying out this type of heist of the national treasury. This is terrible. We're talking about over $3 to $4 billion, $7 billion that was stolen repairing Warri, Kaduna, and Port Harcourt refinery that has not produced even vapor since it was concluded. And when those of us who knew this were saying it, they were ferrying journalists in private jets to go and lie. In fact, when Port Harcourt refinery started, it wasn't producing any fuel. They would bring fuel overnight to the place, line up. You saw the scam, because the media was also in on it, unfortunately. Some mainstream media people partook in lying to the Nigerian public about how this crime was carried out. They were accessories to it. I'm not accusing anybody of it. I'm saying the truth about how this took place.
All right, Mr. Sowore, let's move from the issue around petroleum industry to another issue that's been with us for as long as I can remember, national security. We saw the incident in Woro, in Kwara State, and we've seen successive incidents. And in your view, what exactly has to happen for government to be responsible or responsive enough? We see effort, but it looks like for every effort of government, the people just regroup and say, okay, you've got us on this, then we're going to do more damage. If you want to characterize it, first help us characterize what is playing out. Help us also understand, for instance, if you were a leader of this country, what would you have done to make Nigeria safer?
So to characterize what is happening is complete breakdown of the security apparatus of the country. And it didn't break down overnight. It started breaking down when we started prioritizing making insecurity a business. When I say business, is that the moment you have people within our security services whose job it is to be contractors instead of doing military work or doing police work, then you kill the security agencies. And you add that to incompetence, you add that to corruption. What you get is what you're getting now. Nobody's out there, except on an ad hoc basis, fighting this insecurity the way any country that's in a state of emergency that we are in now would fight it. Everybody's just putting ad hoc measures in place. Things that are supposed to be done by the police is done by a task force. And when you hear task force in Nigeria, it's not the police. The police is at the background. They will use hunters, they will use vigilantes, and then whatever happens, happen. Because the police as a unit, and that's why I paid a lot of attention to policing in recent years. The police as a unit, the Nigerian police, if it was doing its job, it was doing policing, not harassing and intimidating people on behalf of landlords and protecting the elite. The police could have reduced insecurity through proper policing by almost 90% of what you get now. What I mean is that if there was real policing in the country, even the movement of some of these lethal weapons for insecurity or for terrorism, banditry, will be nipped in the bud by the police. The police, if it was doing policing, would have been able to stop and search some of these criminals as they move things, as they move weapons, they move equipment, they move food, they move medicine across board to equip themselves in a lethal way. But when you're talking about insecurity in Nigeria today, you can almost remove the police entirely from it, and it's because the police is rotten, both at the leadership, particularly at the leadership level. And they have zero motivation because you pay them peanuts and you expect them to go and die for you. They have nowhere to live. Their barracks are decayed. You don't pay them salaries. When you transfer them to another place, you don't pay them transfer allowances. You don't pay them, medical. You don't have life insurance for people who put their lives on the line. So you then rely on the army. The army is overstretched. But the army are also using very conventional methods, or I would say unconventional methods. You have a Nigerian army, for instance, that is using bicycles, motorbikes, keke napep to fight terrorists who are using armored cars, who are using RPGs to fight you. Those are questions we don't even ask ourselves. That how did Nigeria come to a point where soldiers have to fight very well-equipped terrorists, from open roof cars? Where do you do that? Nobody even asks these simple questions. And it's not as if provisions are not being made on a regular basis for armored cars to be purchased. But the procurement officers in these military, organizations are just making a killing. That's why if you find a very massive, estate in Abuja, it's owned by army generals. They own some of the best businesses in the city or across the country because this is business for them. And when you then look at that and you extrapolate, you know that there's no way the highest levels of the military will want insecurity to end when they are not the ones fighting the war. And secondly, when they profit from the spreading of this insecurity. But I have another theory, and it's not conspiracy theory. I also think at the leadership levels of the country, I'm talking about the political leadership, they are happy that they have less and less territory to govern. So I think deliberately, they want the terrorists to have control of swath and swath of land, because the moment they control these places, they don't have to construct roads or provide schools or support the populace. So they just have to, send some little money to IDPs through charitable organizations and say, we're helpless. But let me tell you, as of today, this country has lost a huge amount of territory to these terrorists. But the question you asked, which I must answer quickly, is what will I do as the president of the country? If I'm president today, as I've always said, the part of the presidency that says you are the commander-in-chief of the armed forces is something that I will take very seriously. And that will push me to the war front. I will be front and back of every operation in the country. I'm not saying that I'm going to carry a gun, but I want to see my national security advisor every morning. I want to see all the army generals. I want to talk to them. I want to motivate them. I want to ensure that the equipment that say we have purchased, I see them physically. If I can't see them physically, I want to see them virtually. I want to say that they are being put to use. I want to make sure that all the security chiefs are competent. Of course, you say that I've come again. I would never use an IG of police as retired and tired, who has nothing else to do. I look for younger, highly motivated, well-trained, and people to start the process of taking the security of the country seriously. And even when criminals know that you have changed your security architecture, you have changed the mentality and the philosophy, and they are hearing from the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, in charge, because we don't have anybody in charge of the armed forces as a commander-in-chief right now, you will see that things will start changing from that. But in addition to that, and I must say this, is that this cannot be divorced from other insecurities, So there has to be social security. You have to provide employment for young people. You have to make sure that our education system are active and absorbing young people. You have to invest in sports, in health. You have to invest across board in processes that can engage people, that can bring about life that is suitable for people, so that they can value even life in general. So you cannot have a police state, for instance, where every time we're just shooting ourselves.
All right.
You don't have employment, and you expect this to end, or that you don't have an economy that is sound. So you don't have factories. You don't have schools that people can go to. You don't have hospitals that they can go to. And you don't have roads that are safe or well-built or well-maintained. So all of this cannot be divorced from the general insecurity in the country. That's the fundamental point to make about security as well.
Well, very important points that you have made there. We wonder if that is not already being done, and if it is, why we're not
No, they're not being done.
Seeing a difference. But some would say that, in the last couple of weeks that there's been some progress, especially in the fight against insecurity, insurgency, and banditry.
Where?
Why? In the northeast, in Borno State, we've seen the neutralizing of bandit leaders in the northeast, and especially since the designation of Nigeria.
Are you sure of what you are saying?
These have been reported, and since the designation of Nigeria as CPC,
when you say reported, I have reports showing that soldiers have been blown up, at different places that the Nigerian army already took over and secured over the last 4 years, have been retaken by terrorists. We're talking about terrorists that were in Borno, in Yobe, some 5 years ago, who are now in what they call the KKK states, Kwara, Kogi, and Kaduna. What progress are we talking about? There are terrorists right now in Edo State, northern Edo State, in northern part of Ondo State, There are terrorists in Oyo State, even though you like to call them bandits. So which progress are you talking about?
Well, it appears a mixed bag. There are reports of progress, but
it's not a mixed bag. It's not a mixed bag. It's not a mixed bag when terrorists can walk into a village and kill 170 people.
Yeah.
And for 10 hours, and there's no intervention, and you say there's progress.
Where I'm headed, actually, is to ask what options are open to Nigerians who are left vulnerable without any form of security, because that's a reality that stares us in the face. If you can answer that in 30 seconds, because we're out of time.
There's no option. What happens is that you see internal migration and displacement. They'll go and start living in refugee camps. So, because that's one thing we don't discuss even in the media these days, is how many Nigerians are internally displaced, or externally displaced. People are migrating not to America and Europe now, not to Libya. People are migrating to Niger Republic. They are migrating to Cameroon. People are migrating to Mali. And then internally, there are internally displaced camps all over the place, and nobody talks about this. And that is why I think we are also underreporting the gravity of the problem, and it's not in anybody's interest.
All right. We must anchor at this point. And thank you very much for coming on the program. Mr. Omoyele Sowore is a human rights activist and presidential candidate of the African Action Congress in the 2023 presidential election. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Have a nice day.
There's more to come on the program. We have just one more offering. It's something that also impacts hugely on security and, of course, on other areas of emergency. So stay with us for this one. You will profit from it. We'll be right back.
Let's shift gears now to emergency management. February 11th is observed globally as World Emergency Number Day, an initiative dedicated to promoting public awareness, preparedness, and appropriate response during emergency situations. We've been joined in the program by the Lagos State, the director, I should say, or general manager of the Lagos State Command and Control Center, Mr. Femi Giwa joins us right here. I wanted to be sure I got your designation correctly, so I don't give you a title you don't have.
In the end, you did.
So, thank you so much for coming on the program.
It's a real big privilege for me to be on this platform. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I would say not many people know you exist. What I mean by that is that there is a Lagos, I like to call the name for the Lagos State Command and Control Center. I'm sure if you go to the streets, what I say is debatable, by the way, but perhaps a lot of people do not. Maybe we know there's an emergency number and all of that, but there's an agency in charge of all of that. Maybe you can educate us. Let's start with basic education as to what you do, because we can say what you do based on what we know about emergency management, emergency numbers and all of that.
So thank you so much. Like you said, our own responsibility is to continue to build the resilience of the public as to what we do. The Lagos State Command and Control Center is the central, or perhaps you say it is the epicenter for the management of emergencies and disasters across the state. When you say our first responders responding to emergency, it actually starts somewhere. We kickstart emergency response, and I'll tell you the reason why. This is because we are the custodian of the emergency toll-free line. So if you call the emergency toll-free line 767 or 112, it is relayed to the Command and Control Center, where you have the call takers who will analyze and then track those calls. Before those calls, those calls, they go through some process. And then from then, once the call takers, the call agent picks up those calls, using what to call the frequently asked question and their standard operating procedures, those calls within 2 to 3 minutes are processed and then escalated to what we call the multi-agency coordination team, comprising of representative of first responders, specific first responders like LASEMA, like the Lagos State Emergency Management Agency, the Rapid Response Squad, the Lagos State Traffic Management Authority, and the rest of them. Domicile, where we call the Emergency Operations Center. It is from this point that each of these agencies, using their internal dispatch protocol, do relevant deployments. And you see people, they will dispatch first response. So once the call comes in, there's a distress call in any location around Lagos. It gets to the Command and Control Center, which of course is the nucleus, or we call it the powerhouse, for kickstarting an emergency response.
So any form of emergency,
any form of
security,
health, whether it is
fire,
emergency or even non-emergencies. There's a thin line between emergency and non-emergency. For example, we see like rape or maybe any social welfare issues. Now, if you don't treat those issues and preserve the golden hour, they could move from non-emergency to become emergency. So we treat even non-emergency as emergency. For example, a case is reported about rape, and then nothing is done. They could just be uprising, and then you see they're burning houses and the rest of them because the response was not swift. So we deal with those. So we also have the Domestic Violence Agency, the social welfare team, also domiciled in the Command and Control Center.
On the average, how many calls do you receive in a day?
On the average, we receive...
In Lagos?
Yes, in Lagos. Lagos State is a very peculiar state. And then if you're talking about the dynamics of its population, and then you begin to see the kind of call that comes in, you will be amazed. In some cases, we receive between 30 to 40,000 calls every day.
A day?
Yes, but then, you see, we need to understand that there are calls that we call linked call or linked incidents. Now you are calling, madam is calling, 200 people are calling for the same call. Okay. So by the time we do an analysis, and then, of course, beyond that, you also have people putting up calls. Some of those calls are nuisance calls. Some of those calls are hoax calls. So when we see those calls, at the end of the day, you could be talking about maybe we are dealing with maybe real calls, could be maybe like 400, 500 calls, sometimes in thousands, depending on the peculiarity, the peculiarity of the day.
So the core function of your agency is emergency operation?
Well, our core function, let me explain to you. Now, what we do is that, like I said, beyond the fact that we are the central hub where incident management is coordinated in the state, we support our first responders. Now, how do we support them? We support them with information, which we call situational awareness. We support them with resources. Now, let me give you this. Now, the first responders are those that we refer to as those who are at the level of the unseen incident command. These are people who are on the field operation. Now, you are responding perhaps to maybe a domestic fire, maybe a high-rise building. And now you want to achieve your incident objective, which are basically three. Life-saving. You want to stabilize the incident. You want to protect and preserve the environment. Now, as they continue to work under what we call a unified command, you have several responders. It will get to be the work of the incident commander, that's the man who directs that operation, is to ensure that he achieves those objectives. Now, there could be depletion of resources. You need more fire truck.
You need more?
You need more fire trucks, or you need more personnel. You need security. You need to call the command and control. So the incident command will continue to interface with the command and control center.
Yeah. The reason I ask that question, I double down on it, is to say, is your agency not a proliferation of the work of the Lagos State Emergency Management Agency already?
No. LASEMA is a first responder. Now, LASEMA will not attend to any emergency if we do not escalate calls to them or escalate incidents to them. Now, even when they are, of course, by virtue of the Law 16 of 2008 that created LASEMA, LASEMA is meant to direct incident management on scene. Now, while they're on scene, they need all the relevant support to be able to achieve all the objectives they need to achieve. And they can't do that.
But all of this can be taken care of under one agency instead of having LASEMA and having your own agency as well.
Disaster management doesn't work that way.
But it worked prior to the coming on board of Lagos State Command and Control Center.
Let me educate you on that. Disaster management is about multi-agency collaboration. And there's what we call the incident command system. The incident command system means that, now let me just explain to you. Let's say you have fire. If you have fire, the firefighters will need to deal with how to put out the fire. While we are talking about somebody can be trapped with it, LASEMA has the responsibility or providing the requisite skill, people who are skilled in search and rescue. While you are doing that, RRS must also ensure that they provide security. The emergency medical services will be there once you scoop any victim to provide basic life supporting services. So it's about interagency collaboration. Now, while they are doing that on scene, the man who is on scene will not begin to bother his head about how do I get additional resources. Where are
so
the
it's the command that takes care of that.
So the command and control is the central hub. So we'll continue to support.
But prior to your coming on board, the system worked without the interface or intervention of the Lagos State Command and Control Center, didn't it?
It did not work effectively, and that's the essence. You see, if you go to every enclave, you will hear where they talk about the Emergency Operations Center, which is a component of the Command and Control Center. The Emergency Operations Center is where you get all the intelligence and situational awareness and all the resources to support field operation. That's how it's done all over the world. And the essence, and you'll find that disaster management is on a continuum and it's dynamic. We keep changing. We look at best practices. How is it done abroad? So if you go to any enclave, no first responder will perform effectively without a central command, where you get all the necessary support in terms of intelligence, in terms of resources. Now, if you need an additional backup, where do you get those backup from?
Right.
So we are the ones who do all this to ensure that we have a robust incident management system in the state.
Well, Mr. Giwa,
yes.
I could ask my question.
Go ahead.
Better still, I could just demonstrate it to Nigerians. Yes. Because you don't want to wait till you have an emergency before you begin to test some of these things. So I'm calling 767 yes. On my phone. And, well, it's been 8, 9, 10 seconds. It rang? Oh, hello, good morning. Well, I must say that this is a test call, just to be sure that this is working. But thank you for your work. This is a test call, my brother, just to test if this really works. Thank you. So the call was... By the way, I should say, Mr. Agua, before you jump on this, this was not planned. We just decided to try this live. So Nigerians will know, or at least Lagosians will know if this really works. And I must say, my call was picked in 6 seconds. And I reiterated that this was a test call so that we don't have the emergencies. And we're beginning to wonder, what is the number? The numbers to call, 112 and 767. Mr. Giwa, that was good to see. Because the last time we had LASMA, it was LASMA we had on the show. We called the line, it didn't ring. In fact, someone sent me a message, I said, I have been calling that line for as long as I know it has never been picked. But I see a situation now where a lot of people still don't have this information. If you ask the average Nigerian, if they are well-traveled, they'll tell you, okay, I know in America it's 911. I know in the UK it is maybe 999 or 112. I know in Europe it's primarily 112, other European countries. But here in Nigeria, we've had several numbers. In fact, at some point, they were giving us the long 080. So I'm thinking, how am I meant to remember this long number when I have an emergency? But now it is 112 and 767. My question is this: how much manpower do you have for Lagos, which is a population of over 20 million people? You say you get almost 40,000 calls daily. What is your manpower like?
No, well, if you're talking about manpower, are you talking about the sum total of our manpower, not just taking Lagos State Command and Control Center? Are you talking about the manpower of the entire emergency management infrastructure of the state?
No, yours.
Yours.
Because you handle, you're the clearinghouse, you handle the calls.
Our manpower, we have continued to improve on our manpower. And it will excite you to know that Mr. Governor, Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, has approved colossal amounts of money for the upgrade of our systems. Now, we, other than the 767 that you see as a platform, we have introduced what we call LEMS, LERMs. It's called the Lagos State Emergency Responder Management System. This system is a system within system. We have about 5 components in that system. Now, people, other than putting up call through your 767, people will be able to reach us through social media platform. There's what we call the Echo Initiation Distress app that is going to come up, which of course means that with that, people, through through the social media platform,
People can also call for.
We will synchronize that with our system. Secondly, we're also able to call the dispatch, the responders to dispatch management system,
right,
which means that as soon as you put up your call, through requisite technology that are implanted in our infrastructures like vehicles and the rest of them, those call comes in, the responder immediately activates emergency response, moves, and then because of the GIS system, you don't even need to interface with the command and control center. Third, we have what to call the ambulance management system. And the ambulance management system, unlike what you see, is just to preserve the golden hour, which is that timeline between life and death. Now, you have a situation where people scoop a victim, and then you're looking for hospital. With the ambulance management system, you know the specific hospital or tertiary healthcare where you're taking that victim to preserve the golden hour. Then we have the notification and alert system, which will, of course, thrill you. Like most of us travel abroad, we get directory, we get weather directory. Once you're using a phone, whether it's an Android enabled, you just find out that they'll tell you that, okay, well, temperature is going to rise to this level, you're going to have this. Exactly what we're going to do now. So, which means that we can begin to build situational awareness of the public. If there is an incident, let's say around Urushuki, it pops up. So, you know, a tanker has upturned, blah, 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 blah. You need to take this route alternative, or they tell you the most appropriate behavior you need to put up so that you prevent disasters or secondary incidents from this. So these are a couple of things that Mr. Governor has done, putting up infrastructure.
I'm happy we brought you in so that the number 112, at least I called, I wanted to call 112, but no, I think I will be calling. I will not have a reason. But sometimes these numbers are not necessarily for oneself. It's first yourself, and then sometimes something could happen somewhere, you need to call for help for those people. Response time, at least we've tested, is 6 seconds. I don't know whether we're lucky or this is standard. So what is the average response time?
Well, we're trying as much as
in terms of calling and they pick your call.
And then you even get a response to answer.
Now, let me educate us on what we talk about response time. Now, when you're talking about the response time, that response time is that time within which a caller picks up a call, escalates that call, and then dispatches or deploy the necessary resources to an incident scene. It begins to count from when the call agent or the call taker picks up that call. That's the response. So what we try as much as possible to do is to achieve a response time of 5 minutes. But then you also need to know that the response time is also dependent on a couple of factors. Logistics, depend on weather, depend on a lot of conditions. But as much as possible on the average, the state, and that's why you see the decentralization of disaster management. Okay. You see LASEMA as response unit all over. You see fire as divisional offices. You see LATSMA, that's a essence, so that we can have a reduced response time, at least a response time of about 5 minutes.
All right, Mr. Femi Giwa, we're totally out of time. So we wish we can keep the conversation going, but at least we have created this awareness now to be sure that a lot of people can be part of, can get to know how to help themselves and every other person, because in Lagos, there are different things. When you have this crop of people populated all over the place, incidents are all over the place.
It's interesting you mentioned Lagos. Are you aware of this in any other state besides Lagos?
Yes, of course, we're aware. Edo, it's a lot of, Lagos has set a standard and a model. And then we have a lot of people, a lot of states.
Now they know you exist, so that maybe they can come and take a course from Lagos State. Femi Giwa, General Manager, Lagos State Command and Control Center. We must appreciate you. And keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, guys, let's take you to, who takes this? Is it me or Bukola, Kayode, whoever? Let's take you to what the people are actually saying today. So let's begin with, when I saw the first one, I started laughing. River State, it is in the news again. You know, the back and forth, the never-ending fight between Wike and Fubara, the governor of the state. Three, what do you call it now? 3 impeachment notices, and that is still on. But it looks like the president has stepped in again. President stepped in the first time to for reconciliation. Well, the next time he stepped in, it was a controversial suspension of elected officials. Now he has stepped in the 3rd time, where he met with Wike, FCT Minister Nyesom Wike and Governor Fubara. Let's take a listen to what Mr. Nyesom Wike had to say about the outcome of that meeting.
I remember the media was awash since last night to this morning to this afternoon that the president had to meet, broker between you and your successors. But the first thing that they had to follow you to your house and beg. Can you please shed more light?
I didn't know you were there to know that. All I can tell you, yes, Mr. President has been very kind to the people of the state. If there seems to be a problem between the legislature and the governor, and as a father, he really has to intervene. I remember this is the second time Mr. President is intervening. I believe, by the grace of God, this will be the last time. I believe that the Assembly, I've told them to do the needful to obey Mr. President, which I know they will not hesitate. And I also believe that the governor will carry out his own part to make sure that this is the final time Rivers people will begin to hear this kind of discord.
From your own observation, not just mine alone, they've achieved a lot. And in the course of our discussion, they are still assuring us that by October this year, they will deliver the project. So, in my assessment, what they need is the fund, and from my own end is the push. I strongly believe that this promise that we made to our people will deliver it by October, God willing. For me, this project is very important, considering the person who conceived it, my Oga, Honorable Minister. He had a very big vision. He believed that if I achieve this project at record time, Rivers people will be happy with me. So I also, notwithstanding whatever.
So Bukola says now, Kari,
So,
I'm tired of talking about Rivers politics.
well, I don't know if this is all is well that ends well, but Honorable Minister Nyesom Wike is assuring us that this will be the last intervention from Mr. President. But might I ask, guys, is this now a staple to see Rivers politicians go about with their sons?
Maybe we should just play what she's referring to. So this is a former minister, former governor, Rotimi Jr, also with his son yesterday at the gate of the National Assembly. So you understand Bukola's context here. So there you have it, the former minister and his son, whom he says the doctor is there to treat protesters just in case they are injured. Well, you can look at that. Clearly, it's succession planning as well, positioning, posturing, all of that. The game is the game, as I always like to say. But the question is the big one of governance, the delivery of governance. You can say the FCT minister, for example, saying this will be the last time is both an assurance and a threat. You see whichever you want to see in it, that this is the last time the president would intervene. But ultimately, and which is, again, the questions we ask time and again is, how are the people of, whether it's Rivers, the FCT, or wherever these people govern, how are they benefiting? They can have these squabbles, their disagreements, or agreements, as the case may be, which is the bone of contention here. But ultimately, are they delivering on governance? Well, the jury's out there. And as I will say, the people of Rivers, the people of wherever it is that they govern should be the ones telling us we're happy with this or not.
I'm not a conveyor of bad news, but I can tell you it's not over. The crisis is not over. And even whatever happens after the 2027 election, there'll still be crisis because of the personality of the persons involved. That's how I will leave it hanging. You can make of it what you want, but it just speaks to the fact that we need to look for a way for power to get back into the hands of the people. Nobody should be able to claim to make anyone. Yes, somebody will help you get somewhere, but sometimes with the political class, it gets overbearing, whether it's Lagos, whether it's Rivers, whether it's Kwara, the whole gamut of godfatherism can derode or erode democracy in that sense. But, you know, it's up to you Nigerians to decide what you want for yourself. Maybe as kind of they will say some people like it like that. I don't know. But that's much from my end as far as the Rivers politics is concerned. It's nauseating and tiring.
I thought you said it's not over, Jeffrey. Don't say that's much for now. You still speak about this.
I'm just saying that I can tell you for free that it's not over.
Good.
That's all I can say.
So hopefully you speak about this next week.
Maybe not as quick as
maybe
next week.
when we read the body language of all the other actors in the plot, speaking of the Rivers State Assembly, in the coming days, then we would know for sure where we should pitch our tent or whether we should continue to sit on the fence.
I think he said so he told them to do the needful. Maybe they are loyal to him, so it told them perhaps to withdraw the impeachment at the end of the day.
We'll see. But we'll
that's another program. Thank you for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Zama. Bye-bye.
Sunrise Ellie is up next. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
Don't forget the emergency numbers. What is it again?
112 and 767.
Good students. Have a great day.